crush your enemies.
They drew first blood, not me.
See them driven before you.
Oh, my user.
And hear the lamentation of your women.
But I pity the fool.
Glitter in the dark near the 10-house gate.
Phone home.
They're here.
Oh, real light sleeper, child.
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we're rewatching the 80s so you don't have to. We'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in chronological order, overanalyzing what you've seen and spoiling what you haven't. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jesse Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wells.
And today we're discussing Love and Money, released February 12th, 1982. It was written by James Toback in collaboration with Richard Albarino and Pauline Kael, directed by Toback and released by Paramount Pictures. Writer-director James Toback wrote Love and Money on spec, and former Paramount head Frank Yablans was attached as producer, intending to produce the film for 20th Century Fox. When the Fox deal fell apart, Yablans dropped out, and the project fell to Columbia, until, on the strength of Toback's previous film Fingers, Warren Beatty bought the script, intending to star in it, and brought it to Paramount, where he was in production on Reds. Famed film critic Pauline Kael was on a brief hiatus from her criticism work, making inroads as a screenwriter. And knowing her to be a fellow fan of Toback's earlier work, Beatty invited her to work with Toback on the script. Toback enjoyed their collaboration, but put his foot down on a few significant changes she proposed, and ultimately Kael amicably left the project. With Reds taking more and more of his time, Beatty had to vacate the lead role and was unavailable to approve of replacement casting, so Paramount put the project in turnaround. For the lead, Toback had initially hoped to reunite with Fingers star Harvey Keitel, but the new production deal with Lorimar was predicated on the casting of either Ray Sharkey or Jeff Goldblum.
What?
And he chose poorly.
What? Those do not seem equivalent.
I think they just had contracts with both of them, and we were like, we need a movie for one of these guys.
To be honest, like, Harvey Keitel also does not feel right for this kind of role.
It depends. I think if Keitel had been attached, it would have been more budget. There probably would have been more locations. They probably would have expanded the scope of the story a lot. It would have felt more like a combination of Body Heat and Dogs of War.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, like, I could feel it more like maybe an Al Pacino kind of character, but
maybe.
Like, I don't know. Harvey
If
Keitel
you'd seen
seem...
Bad Lieutenant, the original Bad Lieutenant, you
Yeah.
could see him fitting in this story.
Okay.
For the grandfather role, comedian and actor Harry Ritz was set to appear but fell ill. The role was offered next to director George Cukor, who passed due to his obligations to the interchangeably titled Rich and Famous, which we discussed last season. Finally, King Vidor accepted and shot his part in just 5 days.
I'm surprised it took that many.
Yeah.
Right? It's one room, guys.
Oh,
I
no,
think we're done for today.
He goes and listens to a band at one point.
Yeah, that's true. Around the corner from the house.
Yeah.
We see Ray Sharkey as Byron Levin leave his Hollywood bungalow to collect the paper. Over breakfast, we meet his grandfather, Walter Klein, played by King Vidor. Walter suffers from dementia, and Byron has to remind him that he's retired. Walter complains his clothes are shrinking, and Byron's significant other, Vicky, offers to take care of it for him. Byron parks outside a building downtown, and we see a man named Blair in the phone booth in the parking lot. Up in his office, Byron's secretary, Sandy, tells him there's a Blair on the phone, calling on behalf of Mr. Stockheinz to arrange a meeting. Outside, Byron is ordered into a car by Blair, but Byron insists on driving himself. We cut to a restaurant at the Bonaventure Hotel, where Klaus Kinski, as Frederic Stockheinz, eats alone and conducts business from one of multiple guest phones at his table. This location is pretty cool, though.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It looks like the restaurant is like a balcony off the hotel. Do you guys recall the last time we saw the interior of the Bonaventure Hotel?
I looked it up because I knew we'd seen it, and I've already forgotten.
Well, there's one where I specifically remember them referring to it by name because it was a clue. The location.
Oh,
was a
it
clue.
Was Midnight Madness.
Midnight Madness. That's
Right.
where the finale takes place. They go
Right.
up in the elevator to the floor to look down at the pool for some reason.
Oh, yeah.
But then...
Oh, the other one was supposedly Underground Aces.
Right. But I don't remember them saying Bonaventure Hotel in that because I feel like I would have asked this if they had mentioned it in there.
But that was one of the filming locations for that hotel.
That's totally believable. I've just never been close enough to it to recognize it from the scenes in that movie. Byron takes a seat across from the man, but he goes on conducting business by phone, pausing to order for his guest.
Bring Mr. Levin white wine and a lobster salad.
Right away. I'm not hungry. You will be.
Some of these calls are to his own hotel room, trying to contact his own wife, and the voice on the line, unheard by Byron, says,
She was here, sir, but she's gone.
Where's she now?
She's waiting for him in front of the hotel.
seeming to imply that Stockheinz has arranged for his wife and Byron to deliberately cross paths tonight. Stockheinz owns a company called Trans-Allied Silver, and he asks what Byron knows about it before reading Byron's own published thoughts on the company. Byron has accused the company of having a complete stranglehold on the politics of fictional Central American country, Costa Salva. It turns out Stockheinz had a deal in place with Costa Salva right up until the former president's son took over the government there, and the new young leader is a former roommate of Byron's. Stockheinz comes right out with his request. Byron stands to earn $1 million over the weekend by simply flying to Costa Salva and talking his former roommate out of severing ties with Trans-Allied Silver. Stockheinz tosses Byron a Time magazine with his friend Lorenzo Prado, played by Armand Assante, on the cover. Stockheinz has been showering Lorenzo with lavish gifts since he was a boy, and he feels betrayed by his effort to sever ties with the company. I love that this company is called Trans-Allied Silver because it's obviously some Western transnational conglomerate, but calling it Trans-Allied Silver makes it seem like they're really good about pronouns in the office. Stockheinz is worried that Lorenzo's leftist ideology might tempt him to nationalize the silver mines. Byron wonders what's wrong with that, since they are Costa Salva's own natural resources and should benefit the nation and not just its leader and his foreign associates. Byron has no interest in being wielded as a tool against his friend. He stands to leave. Just as he gets in his car outside, a doorman welcomes Mrs. Catherine Stockheinz to the hotel, a very attractive young woman played by Ornella Muti. Too attractive not to be with Klaus Kinski's Stockheinz character for his money. Byron introduces himself and says he was just lunching with her husband. She correctly guesses the meal Stockheinz ordered for him, and then he makes a risky move to get her attention.
If you ever touch him again, or any other man, I'll kill you.
I was so confused by this. I was like, oh, they have an existing relationship.
No, this is a very popular pickup line of the time.
It's so creepy and abusive now. Like, I just thought I was coming into the movie like, oh, we're revealing here the existence of a relationship. Yeah. It's so much worse when you figure out that this is their first meeting.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like, and this is why women choose the bear.
I think this is part of, like, them trying to ape the other movies that were coming out around the same time, like Body Heat, where people speak very aggressively sexually with each other. But this is going so far overboard that it's like, are you a murderer? Do I need to get my security to come out here right now?
How does he know? Does he? Is she?
The guy said, "Right this way, Mrs. Stockheinz."
Oh, okay. I was
when he was
say,
letting
like,
her out
how
of
does
the
he
car.
even know who she is?
They specifically planned it for him to say that right when he was getting into his own car.
Yeah. Okay.
They're lucky he parked out front. If he'd parked like around the corner, they'd have to like figure out what car he came in and park next to it. He threatened to
kill some other woman.
Yeah, some stranger. Oh wait, this is a stranger.
Maybe that's just his go-to line.
Yeah,
like
he says it to 4 more people on the way home.
The valet comes with his car. Thanks. And if you touch him or any other man, I'll kill you.
He's at the gas station on the way home. Can I get 20 on 4? And if you touch any other man, I'll kill you. Mrs. Stockheinz smiles and pushes past him into the building. We cut to a Goodwill parking lot where Tony Sirico as Raoul counts cash from his pocket. I totally forgot about this character. Stockheinz' chauffeur, Blair, picks Raoul up from a street corner, and we cut back to Byron's place, where Vicky is building shelves for the huge stockpile of books they seem to be perpetually unpacking. We learn later that she's actually a bookseller, but she does this work entirely out of the home, and so the inventory crowds every room of their house.
Well, and she's just sawing wood indoors.
Yeah.
Like
you do.
Around all these books.
Yeah.
That's good for those books, right?
She's so concerned about protecting these books. Just all the sawdust is in the air.
Yeah. That night, over dinner, Grandpa Walter notices how beautiful Byron's girlfriend is and asks why they aren't married, but Vicky says they're in no rush. Also, how did you know we're not married? I guess he's looking for rings. Lorenzo is suddenly being interviewed on the television and talks about how the money that was previously being shipped out of the country could be put to much better use, benefiting the citizens of Costa Salva directly.
Mr. President, aren't you afraid that some people will...
You see, I am afraid of one thing, is that I would let the people of Costa Salva down. But before I do this, I would die.
Byron admits to his girlfriend and grandfather that he's jealous of Lorenzo for following his dreams.
He's doing what he loves. I'm doing what I hate.
We don't really get enough of him hating his job in this movie.
Yeah.
His job seems really easy. All he has to do is like look over a loan application and go yes or no. And he doesn't seem to hate it that much when we see him there.
He also doesn't seem to work very hard at his job.
But I mean, who among us? Byron tells Vicky about how Stockheinz sent a driver to his bank today and they had lunch together. He tells her about the $1 million offer Stockheinz made and pretends briefly to have accepted it. The phone rings and Grandpa seems convinced that his enemies are calling the house. It's someone named Bob, and Vicky takes the call in another room. In her absence, Grandpa tries again to get a grasp on what's going on around him.
Byron, what city are we in? Paris?
Los Angeles.
Who's in Paris?
10 million Parisians.
Well, a lot of Frenchmen. Oh, my.
That night, Byron lies awake in bed beside Vicky in a room overflowing with books and fantasizes about Mrs. Stockheinz again, the woman he encountered outside the Bonaventure Hotel for 3 seconds today.
Yeah, see, this is where I thought, okay, they had a previous relationship, and he's just remembering that relationship.
But it's like episode 2 of Clerks. You realize, wait, all these clips are from the same encounter. They've only seen each other once. Because the second episode of Clerks was a clip show, and all the clips came from the first episode. Such a funny joke. And then ABC or whoever aired the show aired the episodes out of order. Ugh. So the clip show was still the second episode, but they were clips from an episode that had not aired yet. In the middle of the night, Byron is woken by cries for help from his grandfather. He finds the man hiding behind a chair in the study, believing he's in mortal danger from enemies infiltrating their home.
You're not taking me seriously. Have I ever told you before that I was in mortal danger?
Yes.
When?
Last night, the night before, the night before that.
The phone rings again, and it's Catherine Stockheinz.
How often do you say to women what you said to me?
Never.
Do you want to see me?
When?
At Casey's, in 15 minutes.
We cut right to Casey's, and Catherine isn't here. Byron phones her hotel room, and she answers, but hangs up on him. It seems he's been pranked.
Yeah, I thought for sure he was going to get home and his grandfather was going to have been murdered.
Yeah, because he keeps saying people are coming here to get me.
Yeah, and then like she lures you out of the house.
Right, yeah. Like she called at 3 a.m. immediately after grandfather thought he heard people outside.
Right.
Yeah. In my mind, I was thinking that she was just trying to see if he was desperate enough to
Right, yeah. She's seeing exactly how pathetic this guy is.
Yeah.
Considering his pickup line.
I wish they had done something with the grandpa. Like, I wish there was more character development there that we establish. What did he used to do? Does he have reason to be afraid of
Right,
things?
yeah. We don't really get too far in depth with that. Byron goes home to fantasize about her some more, and then we see him pacing back and forth in his office. After a moment, he grows frustrated and punches a wall. His secretary, Sandy, presents him with a stack of loan applications, and he approves them all, sight unseen. I really like the actress playing the secretary, and she looked familiar, but she only has one other role, and it was as a naked waitress in a porno, and that was it. Back at home, Byron is cutting Grandpa's hair, and Grandpa asks who Ruth is. Ruth is his deceased daughter and Byron's mother. Byron explains further that he is all the family his grandfather Walter has left. Seemingly in response to all the news of deceased family, Grandpa sings Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, and confuses himself by finishing the song.
Coming for to carry me home. Why did he stop?
Why did who stop?
The fellow who was singing.
That was you.
Was I good?
You were excellent.
Call the Metropolitan Opera.
The phone rings again, and Byron answers it. After a few seconds, he hangs up, claiming it was nobody, and then suspiciously announces that he'll go on a drive somewhere. Just somewhere. No idea where. Just gonna drive around. Just gonna burn gasoline. He returns to the Bonaventure Hotel and parks just as Stockheinz and Blair are pulling away. Upstairs, he knocks on Catherine's door, and when she lets him in, he kidnaps her by force.
But you're not going to make love to me.
I'll never touch you again. Until you ask me to.
As they drive away from the hotel, she asks to get out of the car, and he basically tells her to tuck and roll. She opens the door while the car is still moving, and Byron freaks out.
What are you doing? Wait, what are you, trying to kill us? What's the matter with you? Close the door.
I thought you were going to kill me anyway.
I said if you ever made love to your husband.
I did.
He slows to let her out of the car, and then backs up to collect her again. What is happening here?
So at this point, we're easily 30 to 40 minutes into the movie.
Right.
I don't know what the plot of the movie is. he's supposed to be going to South America or something.
Yeah, this weekend, that was the plan.
Why isn't he doing that?
Well, so far he's turned that offer down, so he's not doing that.
He didn't even accept it yet.
But then what's the story?
I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what we're supposed to think. It's just, hey, a guy told me to do a thing. I don't want to do it. Hey, his wife's hot. I'm going to go kidnap her in the middle of the night. They pull up to a gas station and pretend to simultaneously use the restrooms, but then both emerge immediately to use neighboring payphones. And then they laugh when they notice they both did the same thing. It's like, who are you calling? You're both calling your partners to be like, hey, just so you know, I'm fine. Everything's good. Back on the road later, Catherine asks how Byron knew she wouldn't call the cops on him.
How did you know I wouldn't call the police?
I didn't.
As the sun rises on the same drive, Byron talks of his home life and the girl at home.
Do you love her?
We get along.
During the drive, they drive by the old Howard Hughes plant and runways.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, because that's all gone now. It's all developed into apartments and businesses and stuff.
Right.
But as they're driving by, you see all the hangars and the tarmac.
That's cool.
And up on the hill, you can see the spire for Raoul and Marymount.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. They pull up to Marina Del Rey Hotel and book a room overlooking the harbor. In their room, Byron asks how she met Stockheinz, and she says she was on a date with someone else, and he offered her a ride home. When she told him they shouldn't see each other anymore, he took it so well, she called him back. Byron assumes she invited Stockheinz on one of her patented prank dates.
And he came, and you didn't, and he waited.
We both came. Then we went back to his hotel.
And came some more. No, she doesn't say that last part, but she definitely should have.
And 3 days later, he called me from Buenos Aires and proposed.
She claims she fully intended to join him at Casey's last night, and when he calls BS on her, she tries to leave, but he grabs her arm on the way to a taxi and forcibly makes out with her.
He's certainly very good at forcing her. So this is the second time that she's tried to walk away from him.
Yeah, he keeps calling her bluff on it, yeah. Back in the room, he claims he was hard as a rock outside, but he can't get it up now. He asks her to recite the Star-Spangled Banner to help his erection?
The Star-Spangled Boner.
I feel like this is something people use to calm one down, not to entice themselves to action.
It depends how patriotic you are.
Yeah, I guess.
You stand at attention.
That's good. Sometime later, Stockheinz' driver pulls into the hotel parking lot and makes a call on the lot's payphone. Because there's payphones everywhere. Every 10 feet in public, there's a payphone.
But also, I feel like this is the time in the 80s where you would have had a car phone.
Yeah.
He should have a car phone.
Yeah, definitely. He's a driver. He should be able to answer a call at any time. Byron and Catherine seem to have sex in their room for the entire weekend. During a break, Byron tells Catherine about his skills as an impressionist and then launches first into a terrible Burt Lancaster.
Catherine, I want you to take your middle finger. I want you to shove it right up life's ass.
When Catherine asks for more, he impersonates Stockheinz by paraphrasing his lines from an earlier scene in the film that Catherine's character wasn't around for. But she's still like, oh, that's so funny.
That sounds just like him.
When that plays well, he switches to her accent and jokes about how she's waiting for Stockheinz to die to get all of his money, and she stops the impression, offended by his understanding of her marriage. And the next time we see them having sex, she's crying through it. And I don't know if she's still upset about the impression or if she's just grossed out about the way he talks when he's having sex with her. I don't know what's going on here. Because he just keeps saying, say these things for me. Yeah. Say these words.
Now do America the Beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Do you know Sousa? I just need some good old-fashioned Sousa right now.
Somehow, without having left this room all weekend, they're already reaching a breakup stage because they're jealous of each other's interactions with random hotel staff. It's like, we literally couldn't possibly have been flirting with anyone else, so they're like, well, you talked to the girl at the front desk, and he's like, oh, you talked to the room service guy. Byron tries to get poetic in describing their importance to each other, but it's just weird.
We're gonna be everything to each other.
What?
I'm your father, you're my mother. I'm your husband, you're my wife. I'm your chauffeur, you're my car.
Somehow this turns her around.
You're my car?
Yeah. I mean, the last one was supposed to be a joke because she laughs at it, but it's weird for the middle of the sandwich to be, I'm your husband, you're my wife, because she has a husband. Mm-hmm. And that's why she's upset, is because she's doing this instead of being with her husband.
And then you went from family relations to, oh God.
Yeah.
The guy's just creepy and weird.
And if she's your car, how are you her chauffeur? Are you driving a much larger car that holds cars in the back of it?
Are you having sex with your car?
Why do you ask?
Fill her up.
He's back at that same gas station. And don't touch any other man or I'll kill you. Sometime later, they're still in the room together sharing life stories. When she was 12, she found her father's body after he'd committed suicide. He hung himself naked, and she describes her father's dead penis and his blue feet. Wanted that to sort of pop off the page. The next morning, Byron wakes with a startle and realizes Catherine has left. We see him back at work phoning Stockheinz from his office and hanging up when he hears the man's voice. Byron's unpleasant supervisor, Hankland, stops by his desk to inform him that he's been let go, probably because of all those loans that he approved last week.
I assumed it was Stockheinz got him fired.
I think that is what we're supposed to believe. But
it should be the loans.
He's also terrible at his job.
Yeah.
Arriving home, Vicky gives Byron the stink eye for his recent multi-day disappearance. He tries to distract her with news.
I got fired.
What? When?
Just now.
Why?
Stockheinz.
Jesus, does he control the world?
Part of it.
Again, Byron spends his night fantasizing about Catherine and picturing their naked weekend together. He rises from bed to call Stockheinz and ask if the clock has run out on his offer. Vicky catches him packing and is disappointed to find him packing for Costa Salva. Grandpa Walter is having another episode and screams for the police in the den. Byron rushes to help him and knocks over one of Vicky's 6,000 Jenga towers of books.
The books are literally sitting on the bed.
Yeah.
Like the place where they're supposed to sleep, on top of the blankets. Like, I don't think she has any right to be upset that he knocks some over.
She's just obsessive compulsive. Her character is doesn't make any sense in this film.
If I were her, I'd be upset of the fact that he's taking off without actually discussing the fact that somebody's got to be caring for his grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
You broke the binding. You don't give a damn, do you?
I'm sorry, I'll pay you for it.
It's crazy that they gave this character so many legitimate reasons to hate Byron, but they thought the audience would sympathize with, you knocked over some of my stupidly precariously stacked books to help your dementia-addled grandfather. She could very easily have just been mad at him for cheating, which he's also obviously doing. Grandpa Walter senses Byron is leaving and begs him to stay, but when he can't sway his grandson, he changes his tune.
Go ahead, abandon me. I don't need you.
Byron finds Blair, the driver, waiting for him outside, and he's suddenly on a private plane to Costa Salva with the Stockheinz couple. He has to pretend he's never met Catherine, even though Stockheinz must be aware by now who took his wife to Marina del Rey for a weekend, especially since his driver was in the parking lot.
Right.
Sorting through his luggage in the lavatory, he finds a revolver and checks that it's loaded. Blair watches this whole process through the open door.
So this was his gun?
It seems like it. He's going through his own stuff, and he doesn't seem surprised to find it.
Okay. I thought it was in the bathroom.
I thought it was in the bathroom, too.
Oh, maybe I misunderstood.
Because then I was like, oh, crap. Now you got your fingerprints on this gun. I see where this is going to go.
Yeah, well, we've been fooled by that before. There was a gun in Fort Apache, the Bronx, that people kept touching, and we were like, oh, that's chain of evidence, and then the gun gets tossed in a river or whatever. It's like, nope, doesn't matter. But I don't know why he's in this bathroom with the door open if he's like digging through their stuff. As Stockheinz rests his eyes, Byron moves beside Catherine and asks what her husband knows. She dares him to fuck her right here across the plane from her sleeping husband. When Byron returns to his seat, Stockheinz wakes up and demands a massage from his wife. The Trans-Allied Silver plane touches down outside a small airport in Costa Salva. Lorenzo plays keep away with a soccer ball in a circle of children beside the tarmac. He greets Byron with a warm hug. They rib each other on the weirdness of their situation.
It's a strange costume you're wearing. But that's a strange airline you're flying.
Lorenzo greets Stockheinz as Uncle Frederic and invites all three of them to stay with him in his palace during their visit. Unfortunately, his Jeep only seats 2, so they'll have to travel separately.
How uncomfortable does it get if there are 3?
That depends who the third person is.
Bizarrely, Stockheinz allows his wife and Byron to travel with Lorenzo, offering to catch up on his own. You'd think that he would make Byron ride separately.
Yeah, but I think he knows that the whole point is for him to catch up with his friend.
Right. Then him and Byron should have gone. It just doesn't make sense that he would be so blatantly setting up his wife with this guy if that's not supposed to be intentional.
Yeah, I mean, I think Byron should realize that, but, I think throwing a pretty woman into the mix never hurt anything.
Yeah, but I just feel like Byron would be like, why is your super rich and jealous husband letting you ride with the two of us?
Yeah.
Like, that seems suspicious. Lorenzo parks outside a center for the development of the youth, where a man gives an impassioned speech to a crowd. Lorenzo walks right onto the stage just as he's being introduced. The man makes the entire crowd jump and cheer to show their allegiance to El Presidente, and even Lorenzo finds this to be cringe. Lorenzo and Byron drop off Catherine at the American Embassy where Stockheinz is waiting for her. Byron and Lorenzo walk along a beach nearby, and Byron lays out Stockheinz's entire plan, that he sent him here specifically to change Lorenzo's mind.
How much did he offer you?
$1 million.
I'm sorry.
About what?
$1 million to convince me? To kill me? Stockheinz may be many things, but he's no fool. Anytime you want to kill a man, you go for his bodyguard or his friend.
Somehow, the true meaning of Stockheinz's request had not occurred to Byron until now. No, dude, we had not considered that. Lorenzo talks about the changes he plans for his country, including the national anthem.
I wrote the new one myself. Do you want to hear it?
Nope.
He sings it anyway, and presumably Byron sports a massive erection by the end. Since we learned this is his kink earlier.
I like the Star-Spangled Banner better.
On their way back to the presidential palace, Lorenzo spots a beautiful girl he knows named Pilar and basically chases her into an orchard to have sex with her before wandering back to the Jeep and his waiting friend. And he's like, why didn't you come with us?
Yeah.
We could have had a great time back there. And some apples. The girl laughs a lot during the chase, but there's an undeniable power dynamic in this situation, and it's impossible to say how much of this she has consented to. They arrive at the presidential palace, which Lorenzo has renamed the Palace of the People, but Byron doesn't want to stay here. Lorenzo tosses him the keys so he can drive back to the embassy where Catherine is staying. On his way back, Byron spots one of Lorenzo's bodyguards meeting with Stockheinz's driver Blair in an outdoor market. He reports the interaction to Lorenzo, who doesn't seem sufficiently concerned.
What do you mean, don't worry? You said it yourself. You always go for a bodyguard or a friend. Stockheinz is paying someone off to kill you.
Back at the embassy, Byron heads inside and overhears Stockheinz arguing with a handful of military officials about the ports and points of weakness they've left unprotected in the absence of an experienced leader here. Byron sneaks upstairs to Stockheinz's room, and Catherine assumes it's her husband at first.
You're early. Where's Lorenzo?
Byron yanks her out of her chair, and they kiss. She asks Byron if he did the job he's been hired for, and Stockheinz enters to repeat the question. We cut to an outdoor meal hosted by the American ambassador and his wife, with military officials and various other foreign interests. Lorenzo, the guest of honor, is late. A woman named Melanie regales the table with random poetry quotations, but they must all have been ADR because the camera only shows people's reactions to her words for a long time. We don't see her face until late in the meal.
And she's really drunk.
Right. But it's not because we would recognize her. It's just a lack of coverage, clearly. Others around the table speak highly of Lorenzo's father and of his obvious popularity in the region, evidenced by a series of electoral victories. Lorenzo arrives just in time to refute the claims with a joke.
You know, we have a story about that in Costa Salva. Story of three of the most remarkable men in the world. The President of the United States and the Pope and my father.
Really? He's one of the top three?
One night they were all in this shark-infested sea in this boat. But the boat was built for one person. They couldn't decide who should be saved. So the President of the United States said, now I am the leader here of the greatest nation on earth, and I'm the one who should be saved. And the Pope said, but I am the spiritual guide to the greatest church on earth. Don't you think I should be saved? And my father said, democracy. I am the hope of democracy in all Latin America. What we shall do is vote to see who should be saved. So, 3 men voted. And my father won by 12 votes.
What is so funny?
My father used to laugh at it.
The formerly faceless Melanie pipes up again to admit that her father was also a corrupt politician for the Republican Party in the USA. Lorenzo's highest-ranking general slams his fist down on the table and insists that Lorenzo's father was Latin America's finest ruler, and he doesn't deserve this mockery. Stockheinz jumps in to defend the man as well.
Your father died with one great fear, that you would let him down.
Did he say this to you in Spanish or in English?
He said it with respect.
The respect of a dog for his master.
Stockheinz is enraged by the comment, and the ambassador from America tries to intervene to calm him down, but it's no use. The guests, made uncomfortable by the debate, try to turn in and step away from the meal. Lorenzo excuses himself to tend to more important matters. Stockheinz basically tries to grab him as the man passes, but Lorenzo shoves him off and leaves. After the meal, we cut back to Byron and Catherine, And he's just now putting together that their crossing paths outside the hotel was orchestrated by Stockheinz to keep Byron invested in the situation.
I'll help Frederic in any way I can.
You saying you set me up? Is that what you're saying?
Eventually, she gives Byron the whole she's all that speech. At first, it was just an assignment, but I fell for you, yada yada yada. But by now, Byron doesn't know what to believe. Stockheinz and Catherine begin to pull away from the property in a limousine, and at the last second, Byron forces his way into the back seat with them. Like 3 blocks away, Frederic instructs his driver Blair to kill Byron, and the man points a revolver in his face, but then, inexplicably, he swings the gun to point it at Stockheinz, and even less explicably, Byron saves Stockheinz by swatting the gun away just as he pulls the trigger, missing Stockheinz and tossing the gun out the newly shattered window. Blair and Byron fight on the sidewalk for a bit until Blair lays him out. Stockheinz leaps out to collect the gun and empties it into Blair. He tosses the weapon in Byron's lap and shoves Catherine into the front seat to drive him away from the crime scene. Byron sits here with the body and the gun in shock for a moment until he's discovered by military police who arrest him on suspicion of murder. He tries to explain to the MPs that he's a good friend of the president's, but he is evidently not the first to make this claim. We see him in a cell later, being collected for execution with several other prisoners.
Including the general who was at dinner with him.
They're driven on a dirt road out of town and lined up with blindfolds on. One at a time they are shot to death until it's Byron's turn, but the guns are never fired, and his blindfold is removed to reveal that Lorenzo has arrived to vouch for him. The executioners look annoyed not to get to kill him. It turns out Lorenzo's bodyguard was meeting with Blair on Lorenzo's account because he was arranging to kill Stockheinz and not the other way around. From the testimony of the police, Lorenzo believes Byron killed Blair, which he kind of did, but not directly. Byron tells Lorenzo he's becoming just like the men he spent his life despising. Lorenzo seems to think it will be different when he does all the same things as everybody else. Lorenzo offers Byron a place in his regime, but Byron just wants to go home. Instead, they leave him here with the bodies of the fallen prisoners. We cut to a plane landing back in San Diego, and he calls Bonaventure Hotel from a payphone and gets no answer. He takes a taxi home and inside finds the place overloaded with boxes, which, from what I recall, is exactly how he left it, but the shelves look emptier, and so Vicky is likely leaving soon.
Right.
She barely reacts to his entrance, but notices his bruised face.
What happened to you?
Cut myself shaving.
He lays down on the couch and dreams of Catherine more, as is his way. When he wakes up, the room is empty. No Vicky, no books, no shelves. Even Grandpa's gone.
Yeah, how did you sleep?
Through that whole process?
It must have taken her hours.
Well, he took the red eye back from Costa Salva.
But it's like still daytime.
Yeah, but he had to fly over the South Pole. It's a 24-hour flight. You ever been to Costa Salva before?
No.
Weird rules there. Byron rushes outside screaming for his grandfather, worried, I guess, that Vicky has stolen him, or more likely that the man wandered away confused. He finds Grandpa Walter a few blocks away listening to a live band in a storefront. We cut to some time later, and Byron has loaded what's left of their belongings into a 2-seater convertible and trailer. He and Walter are about to drive away to their new home when a familiar voice calls to them. It's Catherine repeating her question from the Costa Salva airport.
How uncomfortable does it get if there are 3?
That depends on who the third person is.
What a vision of loveliness. Could this be a dream?
She seems to want to come with, but Byron skips the bullshit and asks if they could ever work out together as a couple. She says no, and he agrees, and we get probably the weirdest ending edit so far on the podcast. The shot abruptly cuts to black, and then to a freeze frame of Catherine from a shot we've already seen once in the story, and again in a flashback. And just as I'm noticing that it's a freeze frame and not another shot, the credits start rolling over.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like this wasn't the end of the movie, and that this wasn't even the end of this scene, but they were like, we could cut it off there, and that could be the end of the movie.
Sure.
The end. Love and money. It's pretty rough.
It's very, very rough.
There's not anything happening. We don't know what happened to Costa Salva. We don't know what happened to the deal.
I don't know the point of this movie.
Nothing happens. None of their arcs are complete. Vicky leaves. Good for her.
Yeah,
good
she got out.
Yeah. She escaped the movie. But I don't know what's happening the rest of the time because, I mean, I know what's happening. It's just not interesting. It's not a story.
Yeah.
I don't know how you pitch this to people. You just have to have friends in high places.
I guess. Like, that was my question. I'm just like, who looked at this and said, I need to make this into a film? Who sat through this, like, while they were filming it? Like, you're in these scenes and you're like, what am I doing in this scene? What is this about?
And if you don't have a budget to fake a small Latin American country, then just cut that part of the story out. Have his friend work for another company, and you're talking him out of severing ties with this silver group.
Yeah.
Like, it's so half-assed, the whole Latin America story, that it wasn't even worth bothering with, like, we'll shoot way outside of L.A., but still in L.A., like, recognizably Los Angeles from the trees and the mountain ranges, that why even bother?
And it was only 15 minutes of the movie.
Right.
When the whole plot of the movie was supposed to be go to South America and convince this guy.
Right.
In the meantime, I'm just going to have sex with this woman throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And if the plan was to use her to convince him to go, she never tells him,
no,
you should go.
She never reminds him of the mission. It doesn't even seem like she's aware of the mission until she says, did you do what he paid you to do? That's the first time that we ever get a hint that she even knew what Stockheinz was planning, and then immediately she's confessing to having set him up.
And not even like the reason that he decides to go doesn't even seem to be her.
Right. It's the $1 million.
Yeah, it's the money and forcing him out of his job and the leverage that he has on him. It has nothing to do with, I might get to see her again.
Yeah, it's like he just wanted someone to fuck his wife, and so he came up with this whole elaborate scheme.
Well, because then you use the wife as leverage. You say, I know
I found out about this, and you need to do it, or
or
I'll kill her.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Yeah. Pretend like you're going to kill her. That makes sense. Yeah, but that didn't happen.
No.
So thumbs down.
It is a thumbs down.
What are we thinking Letterboxd?
Oh, boy.
Oh, I was going to ask you, did you say they're in Los Angeles, right?
Yep.
Did you say he flies back into San Diego?
That's where the airport is that he flies back into, yeah.
Oh, why does he fly into San Diego?
I don't know, but that's the only place where that airline actually had international flights to.
That's the only flight that goes to Costa Salva.
Okay.
You had to connect.
I was just like, I think you said the wrong city. But
No. I literally like Googled the airline that he was on to figure out what it was called and where it flew from at the time, because it doesn't exist anymore. Yeah.
Seems like that would be hard information to confirm.
Well, it definitely wasn't LAX or Burbank. So I knew it wasn't the Los Angeles airport. I just wanted to figure out which one it was, and then I figured it out.
Well, maybe they just weren't allowed to film at those airports.
It's the only one with flights from Costa Salva in 1982.
Yeah, you looked up this fictional country. What was I doing? I was looking at my letterbox.
That's right. That's correct.
That is correct. So I have this one at number 20 out of 21.
Okay. I'm impressed.
You're impressed that this did nothing for me?
It did something for you. That's what I'm impressed by.
What
did it beat?
Personal best.
Okay.
Ironically.
Personal worst.
I also have it in 20th.
And what's it above for you?
It's above Madman.
All right.
But below Personal Best.
I have it.
Mine's under Madman.
I have it in 21st out of 21.
Wow.
It's the bottom of my list. It's just below Night Crossing, which is also just below Personal Best. So floating around there at the bottom of all the lists. Our writer-director here was James Toback. Before this, he had written The Gambler, which was recently remade with Mark Wahlberg, and he had written and directed Fingers, starring Harvey Keitel, and friend of the show, Tisa Farrow.
Why did Warren Beatty want to do this movie? The script must have been different.
I don't know if the script was different. I think that's part of why he gave it to Pauline Kael. He was just like, I want like a psychosexual, thriller story that could be like really heavy and deep and with international mystique. And money just was falling out of the deal every time it got handed off to the next person.
And I really want to tell a woman that I want to fucking kill her.
Yeah. After this film, James Toback writes and directs The Pickup Artist, and he wrote Bugsy for director Barry Levinson, and more recently he wrote and directed When Will I Be Loved, starring Neve Campbell. Collaboration writer credit for Richard Albarino. His only other IMDb credit was for creating TV series Swift Justice, starring Taylor Swift. Just kidding, she's not in it. But that was the name of a show in 1996. The other writer, collaboration, Pauline Kael. She's the famed film critic who we mentioned last regarding her scathing review of Clint Eastwood's first Dirty Harry film, for which she was rewarded in the form of a female film critic who gets murdered by the central killer of the Deadpool, the fifth and so far final Dirty Harry film.
I don't know how you can have a career in film criticism when you go off and try to make your own movie and it's this bad.
Yeah.
It's like you can't do better.
But then people could say the same thing about Ebert and his like famous only script. I love it, but a lot of people don't like Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
So what did she critique this movie?
I couldn't find a critique from her on this movie.
Probably conflict of interest.
Yeah. But as far as I know, her collaborations with Toback were all very pleasant. Like, they didn't have any problems with each other. It just got to a point where he was like, I'm not really willing to change this part of the story. And she's like, okay, well, I don't want to spend the whole year doing just this one project, so I'm going to move on, but I wish you luck with everything. And he said that her contribution was great to the story. So there's still a lot of her in the writing here, but...
Well, maybe she would have made something actually happen in there.
Maybe. Who knows?
You'll never know.
Yeah.
No, it's a movie about nothing. Nothing happens. Maybe something should happen.
Nothing happens in the real world. People find love, people lose it. Every day, a child watches his mother beaten to death on the steps of a church. A man betrays his best friend for a woman.
What is that?
It's Brian Cox as Robert McKee in Adaptation.
Okay. Sure.
And if you, my friend, can't find that stuff in life, then you don't know crap about life.
Cinematographer Fred Schuler. We've seen his work so far lensing Gloria, Stir Crazy, and Arthur. He's back this season with Soup for One and King of Comedy. And later, Amityville 3D, Nothing Lasts Forever, Fletch, and Armed and Dangerous. The editor here was Dennis M. Hill. He previously cut exclusively for Robert Altman on titles Nashville, Buffalo Bill and the Indians, or Sitting Bull's History Lesson, Three Women, Quintet, and Health, from which we've covered Three Women and Health. Later, he cuts UF Oria, Major League, Son-in-Law, Police Academy, Mission to Moscow, Powder, and National Lampoon's Van Wilder. Ray Sharkey was Byron Levin. Before this, he'd appeared in The Lords of Flatbush, Paradise Alley, and so far on the show, Heartbeat, Willie and Phil, and The Idolmaker. His final credit was in Cop and a Half before he passed away in 1993 from AIDS. Ornella Muti, or Muti, I never know how to pronounce this, was Catherine Stockheinz. She has mostly Italian films before this, but we've seen her previously in Flash Gordon as Princess Aura. Later, she's Sophia Provolone in Oscar, and then it's back to mostly foreign titles I didn't recognize. Klaus Kinski played Frederic Stockheinz. He played Count Dracula in Nosferatu the Vampire, Aguirre in Aguirre the Wrath of God, and Fitzcarraldo in Fitzcarraldo. He's Juan Wild, the Hunchback, in For a Few Dollars More. He's the father of actress Nastasia Kinski, who we saw last in Tess. Actually, we saw her again recently in One from the Heart. So far on the show, we've had him as the psychiatrist father in Schizoid, as Dr. Hugo Zuckerbrot in Buddy Buddy, and Kinski famously turned down the role of Tote in Raiders to do Venom earlier this season. Armand Assante played Lorenzo Prado. Before this, he was also in Lords of Flatbush and Paradise with Ray Sharkey. He was John Hawkes in Prophecy, and we've seen him so far in Little Darlings and Private Benjamin. Later, he shows up in Hoffa, Fatal Instinct, Judge Dredd, Striptease, The Road to El Dorado, and something called Last Run, which actually reunited him with Ornella Muti.
I really wanted him to work in I Am the Law in here.
King Vidor played Walter Klein. This was his final feature film after a long and celebrated career. He has directing credits dating back to 1913, when he was just 19 years old. He wrote and directed The Texas Rangers in 36 and War and Peace in 56. He wrote Streets of Laredo, and IMDb lists him as the uncredited director of the Kansas sequences of 1939's Wizard of Oz, which is funny because the other director, George Cukor, was fired off of Gone with the Wind, which came out the same year from the same director. Vidor has 5 Oscar nominations for Best Director for The Crowd, Hallelujah, The Champ, The Citadel, and War and Peace, and in 1979, he was presented with an honorary Oscar for his contributions to the art. He passed away later this same year from a heart attack. Susan Heldfond played Vicky. She was previously Amy in Why Would I Lie, which we'll get to with a minisode eventually. William Prince played Paultz. Before this, he was Ike Mazard in The Stepford Wives, Bishop in Family Plot, and Edward George Ruddy in Network. We saw him last in Bronco Billy, and after this he's in Spies Like Us and The Paper. Tony Sirico played Raoul. Kind of dropped this character after we introduced him. Before this, he was in Toback's previous film Fingers. We've seen him in Defiance and Hoodlums. Later, he's in Goodfellas, Deconstructing Harry, Celebrity, but he's probably best known as Polly Walnuts from The Sopranos, and we just lost him a couple years back. Jacqueline Brooks played Mrs. Paultz. She was in Toback's earlier film The Gambler, and we saw her last as Aunt Ethel in Paternity and as Millie in Ghost Story. After this, she's Dr. Cooley in The Entity. Daniel Feraldo played Hector. We just saw him as Ginger Trinidad in Rich and Famous. He's back as a taxi driver in Losing It later this season. He was Pepe Sanchez in MacGyver episode Jack in the Box, which I believe is the prisoner killed during a failed jailbreak halfway through the episode. More recently, he was Father Rodrigo in Mayans MC, that sort of spin-off of Sons of Anarchy. Terry Jastro played Clem Dixon. He was a longtime producer and director of ABC Sports, and he has 7 Emmys from 17 nominations for sports broadcasting. He was married to Anna Archer, the love interest of Hero at Large and Raise the Titanic, who returns right around the corner opposite Omar Sharif in Green Ice later this season. Tom McFadden played Blair. Before this, he'd been in Prophecy. We've seen him as a colonel in Running Scared. Later, he's Mr. Weber in A Nightmare on Elm Street, Minister in 976 Evil, and Mac Cronin in direct-to-video Uncle Sam.
Was the chauffeur in Venom also Blair?
You're saying, was that the name of Oliver Reed's character?
Yeah.
I don't think it was Blair.
It was David or something like
Yeah,
that.
or Michael or David sounds right.
His name was Dave.
Yeah, it was right.
David, okay.
I remembered it.
Nice, yeah. Cynthia Allison played newscaster. She has almost exclusively newscaster credits. At first, I thought this was Catherine Mary Stewart in another, like, super tiny role, like the one she had in, what was that, Nighthawks? She was like a bank teller, and then it exploded immediately. Sonny Gibson played Bodyguard. We saw him last in Underground Aces, featuring the same hotel, apparently. Tony Plana played National Guard General. We've seen him now in Seed of Innocence and First Family, but more recently, he was Rudy, the younger brother of the protagonist in Zoot Suit, and he's back this season for An Officer and a Gentleman. Later, he's in Nightmares, Born in East L.A., JFK, Nixon, Primal Fear, and he's Ignacio Suarez on Ugly Betty, and the recurring role of Devontae Kano in Mayans MC, which also stars his wife, Ada Maurice, as Dita Galindo. But without a doubt, we three know him best as Jefe, second in command to the infamous El Guapo in Three Amigos. Who does not know the meaning of the word plethora?
Jefe, what is a plethora?
Why, Guapo?
Well, you told me I have a plethora, and I just would like to know if you know what a plethora is. I would not like to think that a person would tell someone he has a plethora and find out that that person has no idea what it means to have a plethora.
Forgive me, Guapo. I know that I, Jefe, do not have your superior intellect and education. But could it be that once again, you are angry at something else and are looking to take it out on me?
Stephen Keep Mills played Hankland. He was most recognizable at this time for playing Les Kincaid in 27 episodes of Flow. Breck Costin played Hotel Doorman. He was Tommy Hill in Humanoids from the Deep. And later, he's back for 10 to Midnight and The Man with Two Brains. Gene Rutherford played Hotel Waiter. He was Rufus Quint in Willpenny. I think that's everything for Love and Money. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, you can find all our socials at linktree/vintagevideopod. If you enjoy what we're doing, consider giving us a review on iTunes. I don't think it helps visibility, but it's good for morale. And if you really like the show, maybe you should join our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/vintagevideopodcast for access to all our 70s reviews and a hand in choosing next month's film. Patrons are currently choosing between Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter, Chinatown, The Dion Brothers, Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell, Gatorbait, The Groove Tube, Herbie Rides Again, The 9 Lives of Fritz the Cat, The Parallax View, Spies, 3 the Hard Way, and Where the Red Fern Grows for a 50th anniversary review next month. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time when we'll be discussing McVicker, which IMDb describes like so. John McVicker was a notorious London criminal known as Public Enemy No. 1 for armed bank robberies. He was captured and imprisoned in a high-security facility, but continued attempting escapes. We leave you now with the trailer for McVicker.
Britain's most vicious criminal.
You try and grab me and I'll break your jaw.
They gave him 23 years, and he gave them hell.
John, you still want to get out?
John Roger McVicker. Inside.
Chairman number. You know my name.
Outside. Nothing could stop the man they were all out to get. McVicker. At a cinema near you now and from Sunday.